The remaining Shin and Ruminas are prime examples of this. Damn it, I will never forgive you for mocking me. Jahil seemed to be enraged, and Shin was hit with an all-out attack, with injuries mounting all over his body. It was such a fierce attack that even Shin's infinite regeneration couldn't keep up with the healing. Even so, Ruminas came close and made contact, instantly regenerating the wounds, so there was no bleeding. But there was no doubt that her energy was being drained. Damn, you're still trash, showing mercy was a mistake. Yes, that's true. It would have been foolish to trust someone like that. The two of them grow increasingly resentful towards Yuuki. From Yuuki's perspective, he was thinking, what a selfish thing to say, but he wasn't stupid enough to say so, so he decided to accept the criticism in silence. Besides, it's not like Yuuki has the luxury of it either. Kagali, Laplace, Tia, and Mai, 4 of their companions were still left behind. In a world where time has stopped, touching something carelessly could destroy the body. For this reason, Yuuki has been unable to take his comrades out, to fool Jahil. He has placed dolls made from transformed earth, soil, lump, and clay, but that alone is not enough to completely deceive him. He wants to move the battlefield away from this place as soon as possible, so that his comrades are not harmed. Of course, that depends on Jahil. If he panicked, Yuuki's plan would be revealed, so he teleported to a distance where Jahil could catch up. That's some impressive courage, Ruminas muttered, having seen through Yuuki's thoughts. I thought he wouldn't be the only one to run away, but it seems he had his own reasons. Shin also agreed. It seemed that he would somehow be able to avoid being labeled a coward. Yuuki wants to keep Jahil away from his friends. If attacked, it will be impossible to know whether it will be possible to revive them once time starts moving again until it is tried. He thought it would be possible as long as his soul was safe, but it would be premature to become optimistic. Ruminas nodded and decided to cooperate with Yuuki once more. Shin has no objections. The thinking was that it would be better to spread out the attacks rather than continue being exposed to a fierce onslaught. I'm going to be serious, so you'd better follow me. If you're scared, you can just run away, okay? Ruminas and Shin followed Yuuki and leaped forward, taunting him like that. Jahil ponders for a moment, then grins. Very well, I will let you experience my power to the fullest. It seems that Jahil has also decided to pursue Yuki. Ultima and Karara, who were watching from the sky, looked at each other and nodded. Rimuru-sama will be saddened by the casualties. That's right. Let's work together and defeat him without causing any casualties. Ultima and Karara also joined in this plan. Either way, Jahil was now a complete monster. Ultima and Karara were so unaware of the difference in their strength that they boasted that they could defeat him on their own. It was good to come up with the right strategy and follow it. Thus, with Yuuki, Ruminas, Shin, Ultima, and Karara helping out, the battle against Jahil resumed. And so, everyone was drawn to the wasteland by Yuuki's teleportation. Jahil, too, is aware of Yuuki's intentions. I could have just defeated Shin and Ruminas and then slowly pursued Yuuki. However, I didn't do so because I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to go along with a foolish plan. The reason is simple. The power he had acquired was so amazing that he wanted to try it out without any reservations. Rather than defeating them one by one, it would be a demonstration of absolute power. It would be more satisfying to crush the strong ones who were fighting with all their might than to face those who were protecting something and couldn't use their full strength. Jahil took wicked delight in this. Shin, who had injured him, the cheeky Ruminas and Ultima and Karara, who had mocked him, and the person he hated the most, Yuuki. He intended to crush them all together and make them understand the difference in their strength. And then you arrive at that place Is that the place where you want to die? Oh dear, I have no intention of dying. You're the one who's going to die. That's right. Yuuki was the only one who was reluctant, while Ruminez and Shin were full of enthusiasm. Ha. The weak are so foolish it's sad. Jahil laughed and looked down on Yuuki. Since Yuki had killed him once, he was determined not to let him escape. The same goes for Ruminez and Shin. Jahil never forgot those who had hurt him. He had a very vindictive and narrow-minded personality. Despite this, Jahil was still on guard against his surroundings. After making sure that Ultima and the others were following him, he laughed evilly. I won't let you escape either. You've made a fool of me so thoroughly, so prepare yourself for a death that won't be easy. As you can see from the way he treated Cagali and Vega, Jahil is a shady character. If he were to be defeated, he would undoubtedly suffer a terrible fate. However, no one is afraid of that. Don't make me laugh. Even if I die, things won't go the way you want them to. The less one knows their place in the world, the more they boast. Well, you're going to die in the end anyway, right? Even if you beg for mercy. When that happens, I'll never forgive you. I'd like to finish him off in a spectacular way, but that might be a waste. Well, think about the difficult parts later, but I'll just give him a fair beating. Ruminez, Shin, Ultima, and Karara were all excited by this. It's not that they were denying the possibility of losing, but they were still taking that into account and still intended to aim for victory. Yuuki, for his part, is determined to provide support. My attacks don't seem to be working, so I'll at least make use of teleportation. He approached the match against Jahil with an endlessly positive attitude. The battle began in this way, and the outcome was clear very quickly. Jahil was just too strong. That's no surprise, as Jahil's existence value reaches the hundreds of millions. Victory or defeat isn't decided by mere numbers alone, but overcoming that difference was extremely difficult. Ultima and Karara made full use of their newly acquired nothingness and began their duel. Ultima unleashes Pierce Pull Hand on Jahil. Its poisonous claws are vicious, but sadly they are repelled by the exoskeleton. Karara fires her golden gun and slashes with her sword. His exceptional fighting skills were in vain in the face of his absolute defensive power. The Dharma that Ruminez possesses is a threat even to Jahil. However, Jahil transformed his arms into tentacles and smoothly deflected the sword strikes. Even Ruminez' Law Dharma didn't work on her, so Shin's sword can. Hail, Geki was no match for it. None of the attacks worked properly. That was no surprise, as Jahil had also used his newly acquired authority to launch countermeasures. So it's the ultimate ability, ultimate skill. Evil Dragon King Azzy. Dahaka, that looks useful. Unlike Vega, who relied solely on instinct, Jahil rationally grasped his powers. Moreover, with his current state as the Infinite Eater, which had even absorbed Xeranis's Devastator virus, Dark Multiplication Devourer, he was now able to devour and compete with the Void head-on. In terms of absolute energy, Jahil has more. At this point, it's just a matter of arithmetic. Even though he was slightly less efficient, Jahil was the one who won in the end. If Ultima and Karara had not obtained Rimuru's slime cells, their fate would have been sealed with just this battle. It could be said that they were fortunate that the battle was still going ahead. That's the situation. There was no way that Ruminez and the others, veteran warriors, would not have failed to realize that they would be at a disadvantage in a long-term battle. What do you guys think? Is there anything we can do? I'll defeat you with all my might. Shindono, isn't your opinion realistic? To be honest, I don't think I can defeat him even if I hit him with my strongest secret technique. Karara thought that perhaps God-destroying bullet judgment might work, but it was unclear when it would become usable again. If it were possible to use it, it would be obvious, but since time has stopped now, it is not possible to know whether the necessary karma has been accumulated to use it again. It is a weakness that only those who can use it know about, as the optimal solution to the one-shot per day limit is the stop world. Also, there is the Kiwami technique, Flash Ninami. But it is too early to unleash it. You need to be able to see through the enemy's characteristics and be confident that you can defeat them. Karara wasn't a reckless fool, but had a natural instinct for determining success or failure. That's why she simply appeared to enjoy fighting with abandon. We needed something that would give us confidence in victory. If he were to unleash Flash Ninami, here he would certainly be able to inflict great damage. However, as a result, Karara was rendered unable to act. Furthermore, the credit for the achievement went to someone else. Isn't that a bit funny? That was Karara's true feelings. No matter how reckless Karara was, she had no intention of taking a gamble against Jahil right now. Karara had decided that if she had allies with whom she could cooperate, it was not time to use her last resort. On the other hand, if she had no companions, if there was no other way, Karara would have unleashed her Flash Ninami without any hesitation. Such duality was also part of Karara's true nature. Therefore, Shin is truly a muscle-brained, wild person. Without any thought for the consequences, Shin charged at Jahil. Always give it your all, with all your might and with complete dedication. Glancing at Shin, Karara, Ultima, and Ruminas were holding a strategy meeting. Once we've significantly reduced his stamina, can I leave the rest to you guys? Of course it's no good. If I die, Rimuru-sama will get angry with me. I see. In that case, it's still too early to jump into battle. That's true. At the very least, as long as this suspended world isn't lifted, the measures we can take are limited. In the end, no good ideas were found. Seeing this, Jahil burst out in loud laughter. Laugh out loud, you weaklings. Jahil's honest opinion trampled on the pride of Ultima and the others. I will kill you. I will torture you and kill you. I will torture you and kill you. I will kill you after spending tens of thousands of years until you are begging for death. We get along well, Ultima. I'll cooperate when that happens. These devil girls get hot-headed easily, so even just containing their anger is a struggle. Calm down. Even after hearing Rumina's warning, he couldn't hide his irritation. However, he has grown since he didn't commit a suicide attack. If he had taken on the challenge, without any idea that it would work against Jahil, he would have wasted more energy, and the match would have ended. As proof of this, Shin is tired, toil, labor, trouble, distressed, exhausted, tired. Jahil has taken the ultimate ability, ultimate skill, Evil Dragon King Azidahaka, and clad it in the ultimate metal, Hihirikane, which has become his own armor. It is so effective that it absorbs attack energy from all directions, leaving no blind spots. He easily deflected Shin's attacks while absorbing her energy. Shin collapses and takes a deep breath. Ruminas was evacuating Shin. With this happening, those who remained could no longer even move easily. Even the tough Shin was in that state, so Ultima and Karara's energy would be consumed in an instant. The only thing that can be contacted is Rumina's law Dharma. However, that does not mean that the attack will work. It was almost a checkmate situation, and there was nothing else to be done. Well, those cheeky girls will need some punishment. Don't mess with me, you're the one who's the brat. Right, you're so insolent, even though you're only 1% of us. Karara and Ultima were enraged. Ruminas and Yuuki, who had made themselves invisible to avoid causing any harm, were unable to say anything to what the two were saying. Although she may look like a young girl, her primordial lifespan is comparable to that of the base world. Remembering this, or perhaps realizing it, she refrained from speaking. Then Jahil burst out in mocking laughter. Then bring it on. If you don't come, I'll go first. Jahil moves nimbly, no longer resembling the way he was when he was fat. He reached top speed in an instant, almost as if he had teleported. That's faster than swimming. If this wasn't a stopped world, the damage would have been enormous even if it was just the shock wave that reached sublight speed. First, Jahil targeted Ultima. Ultima reacted instantly and took evasive action, but her balance was slightly off. Aiming at that, he struck her with his fist clad in Infinite Eater. The fist pierced both of Ultima's arms, which were blocking the attack. At that moment, both of his arms were engulfed in flames. Jahil even controlled the hellfire of Flame King, Agni, at will, concentrating the heat into Flame Void-Eating Fist, blast blow. The enormous amount of energy that had been refined caused Ultima's arms to explode, exploding at her chest. The explosive, destructive force that was unleashed sent Ultima's small body flying into the air and slamming into the ground. Carrera, who had come to cover for Ultima, was also instantly knocked down. Wyatt. By the time she was shocked, a large amount of energy had already been taken from Carrera's body. This is the effect of Dark Multiplication Devourer Devastator virus. Jahil's left arm transformed into a tentacle, which crawled along the ground and attacked Carrera. The swarm of tentacles coiled around Carrera like snakes, raging and trying to devour her. They also aimed their brunt at Ultima, her other prey. The tentacles entangled Ultima, restricting her movements. Carrera was also in a similar state of restraint. Being conscious, but unable to move was humiliating for both of them. However, forcing themselves to move only served to drain their energy even more violently. It would be wise to stay quiet and wait for help. Sensing this, Ruminez cuts the tentacles with Laudarma, but as if to say that Ruminez was in the way, Jahil used his strong arm to punch her away. Jehejejejejejej. Weak, so weak, I'm invincible. I never thought I'd be able to obtain this much power, but as I am now, there's no way I'll be defeated by any person people. Jahil's laughter echoed across the battlefield. Jahil was filled with confidence that he could even slay a god. Jahil was intoxicated with the power he had gained, believing that killing a god was no longer a dream. It seemed like the outcome was decided, but it's noisy. It's really unpleasant. Black and White have arrived. The battle had only just begun. Diablo stepped forward. Maybe you're planning to fight alone. Of course, I acknowledge your abilities, but to be honest, you're a nuisance. So I'll leave those two to you, Diablo said as he approached Jahil. It's natural and unpretentious, as if you were just taking a walk. Diablo calmly stared at Jahil. The energy was tremendous, at the very least several times that of Diablo. Q-fu-fu-fu-fu, that's wonderful. Rimuru-sama entrusted me with this, but I'm sure he foresaw this situation. I, too, will admit that you are a perfect opponent. To be honest, Jahil is a formidable opponent. This was proven when even Shin was unable to defeat him. However, Diablo had a different opinion about Shin. He was secretly impressed that he was able to fight so well without Rimuru's slime cells and without being able to use the power of nothingness. That was why Diablo was grateful for his good fortune. He had the opportunity to kill Jahil with his own hands, something even his first secretary couldn't do. This would show that Diablo was even more important. If he can be of use to his master, Rimuru, then that alone is his wish being given. This opportunity to shine is a joy beyond Diablo's wildest dreams. That is where daily study, training, drilling, and hard work come into play. Diablo was excited and eager to make the most of this opportunity. I was also worried. It's not a trivial matter, like whether or not we can beat Jahil. In fact, Diablo had sensed Zijin's presence. He was worried that if he didn't hurry, his prey would be stolen. In other words, victory is a prerequisite. Q fu 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 fu. Last time I gave the prey to Zijin, so this time I'll properly dispose of it with my own hands, Diablo said, assessing Jahil. This made Jahil furious. What's with those eyes? Don't look at me, the great sorcerer Emperor Jahil, with such arrogant, haughty eyes. What a fool who doesn't know his place, Jahil fumed. Absolute power in the face of violence, tricks are meaningless. Poor skill and level are no match for the unreasonable mainstream of power. Specifically, it makes sense that a human body would not be able to push back a giant meteorite. Jahil's power cannot be deflected with simple tricks. Die. With his powerful arms wrapped in hellfire, Jahil attacked Diablo. He unleashes a simple yet absolute technique, flame void-eating fist, blast. Blow. It destroys, incinerates, and devours anyone it touches. It's an invincible technique that combines offense and defense. Jahil has no experience with physical combat or fighting techniques, but his tentacles simply split and swarm the enemy on their own, so he doesn't need to do anything himself. This is also something that can only happen in a suspended world, but if the laws of physics were followed, it would be an even more brutal technique. The heat wave burns the enemy, and the explosion becomes a shock wave that trams, crushes, destroys, rush the weak, and if Jahil could just absorb the energy that dissipates, he would be able to win without being exhausted. It was a royal technique, befitting Jahil, as victory was assured simply by waiting. Ga 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 ga. Die, you little fag. Regret underestimating me and repent in the afterlife. Jahil's confident attack approached Diablo. However, Diablo did not panic. The corners of his mouth curved into an evil smile. I'll teach you guys as well. Watch closely as I fight, Diablo told Testarossa and the others. Ultima and Carrera, who had regained their freedom of movement, looked annoyed. However, they didn't complain and obediently followed orders. Yuki is also watching from the sidelines. Ruminas also didn't want to miss this opportunity and planned to watch without any reservations from her special seat next to Testarossa. As long as Diablo wins, that's fine. Even if he loses, he can take a break. Diablo paid no attention to the spectators, who had all sorts of different intentions, and focused on Jahil. The approaching tentacles split into multiple layers and attacked Diablo. However, none of these even come close to Diablo's abilities. He perfectly saw through it and dodged it with the smallest of movements. Moreover, he even foresaw the next move and dealt with it without a single hesitation. TCH, I guess I have no choice but to admit it. At least for now. I know you're not happy, but this is a valuable opportunity. Diablo will show you his hand, so study hard. Testarossa scolded Ultima and Carrera, who looked displeased. It subtly tells us that what happens next is important. Rumina said. Even so, it's an incredible feat. With that much power put into it, it would be extremely difficult to withstand it with technique alone. True to his words, Diablo showed off his extraordinary skills. While using Void Collapse to maximize his own body's strength, he also perfectly adjusts the speed at which his body collapses to balance with infinite regeneration. He dealt with the violence brilliantly by not accepting it head-on, but by dealing with it from an angle with maximum efficiency. It is the pinnacle of skill. I mean, that was magic, right? No matter how you look at it, you're using it. Right. That's right. I thought it was impossible to use magic while time was stopped, but I see. If you're inside your own body, you're separated from the outside laws, so it's possible to use magic. I could understand that, but when it came to putting it into practice, it was a different story. I don't want to admit it, but he's amazing. HMPH, I'll overtake you one day. Ultima acknowledged Diablo despite his hateful comments, and Carrera, for her part, had set her sights on Diablo. Testarossa also couldn't hide her surprise at Diablo. It's surprising that even though the gap between him and Jahil is hopeless, he's even making use of magic to make up for it. Filling his entire body with void collapse, he maximized his physical abilities, which were then further strengthened with magic. When his trained skills and levels were combined in this state, Diablo surpassed Jahil. That's wonderful. It's a new fighting technique that combines magic and skill. It seems to be based on a fundamentally different theory from existing battle mages. The three demon girls were each fascinated by Diablo's fighting style, which was based on a new theory. It's a similar, yet different principle. It is a logic that any strong person will understand, that what is important is how to use power. It would be a different story if they were able to produce an endless supply of magical energy, like Milim and the dragon kinds. It would be wrong to base our thinking on such insane beings. So here we will limit our discussion to ordinary, strong people. How far can a small amount of magical power go against an opponent with overwhelming energy? The most important thing is to eliminate waste and achieve maximum effect even with small amounts of energy. Diablo had perfected it at a level that ordinary people could not match. Even if Testarossa and the others tried to recreate it, it would probably take several years. However, since the prerequisites were met, it was a technology that would eventually become possible for these girls, who live for an infinite amount of time. That's probably why he showed it to us. Testarossa felt a little irritated as she was shown how confident Diablo was. Diablo spoke to the three demon girls as if to teach and guide them. Q-fu-fu-fu-fu-fu, look closely. This is the truth I have attained by observing Rimuru Sama's wisdom and analyzing the power he bestowed upon me Celestial. The truth of the Celestial Circle. It was a battle technique invented by Diablo that was only possible once Rimuru's slime cells were endowed with the power of void collapse. Even the amount of energy is not an issue, and by recycling it with the utmost efficiency, consumption is controlled, creating a perfectly harmonious effect. This makes continuous combat possible forever, making it an excellent technique that allows one to face any enemy. Even in future generations, it would be praised as the strongest, undefeated combat technique, but the prerequisites were so strict that only a limited number of people could use it. It was passed down to only a few of Rimuru's executives. As an aside, needless to say, the prerequisite was whether or not Rimuru had slime cells. I guess it was the right decision to ask Rimuru-sama, after all. I was in great physical condition without it, but now that I have it, I don't want to go back to the way things were. Ultima and Carrera nodded to each other in whispers. Leaving aside Yuki, who was watching from the sidelines, Ruminez was the only one who was left out. I don't know what you received from Rimuru, but are you bragging? I didn't receive anything. Of course, it has nothing to do with you. How dare you? You are our property. That's true. We must also work on establishing laws so that Rimuru-sama can be kept secret. This statement was no joke, and from now on, the outflow of slime cells would be thoroughly prevented. Rimuru and Seal had fully agreed to this, and so a future in which even Luminous would be unable to obtain them awaited them. And then there's Diablo. After finishing his instruction to the three demon girls, he was finally about to get serious. Jahil is powerful, but that's no problem. It was quite fun. You were a great learning material, but it's time to end it. As a token of my thanks for tormenting my subordinates, I'll show you what I'm really made of. With that declaration, Diablo increased his magical power. Even in his current state, Diablo was already superior to Jahil, but with the further super high-speed excitation of his magical power, Diablo's power would reach its peak. And if he unleashed the strongest and most powerful secret technique, end of World Requiem, while making full use of the truth of Celestial, it would be easy to erase Jahil from this world. He named it Celestial End, and with this technique, Diablo intended to eliminate Jahil once and for all. Even if he had not been able to defeat it, the battle was practically decided. However, because the recoil of this technique was too great, it was necessary to maximize the strength of one's own body. Diablo absorbs the surrounding elementary particles and instantly reinforces his body. He reconstructs his body into a strong one that can withstand high levels of energy usage by absorbing the surrounding matter. And so, preparations were nearly complete, but Kyaha, an innocent laugh accompanied by chills, rang out across the battlefield. TCH. Diablo clicked his tongue. Unexpectedly, time ran out. However, thinking about the intruder who was sure to come in, Diablo's expression clouded over. Well, it looks like my time here is up. And that premonition turned out to be correct. Emma. Veldanava was visibly shaken, probably because his pride and joy, defense had been broken by my empty Koit breathe collapsu sword can. This is a remarkable achievement. Although I was putting on a brave face, I thought that in the worst-case scenario I would lose unilaterally, so I'm satisfied that I got my revenge. But no. This was no time to be complacent. The atmosphere in Veldanava has changed. It was as if I had made up my mind to cross the final line. I thought this might be bad, but wait. It seemed like Veldanava was about to launch a powerful attack, but he suddenly stopped. I wondered if something had happened, but I couldn't miss such an opportunity. I threw away my hesitation and attacked Veldanava with my sword. But at that moment, it looks like it's starting to move. Guy's warning distracted my attention from Veldanava. Ivalage began to move again. At times like these, it's inconvenient if Seal isn't there. I alone can't keep watch in all directions enough. Still, this has become a hassle. In front of me was Veldanava, and in the back is Ivalage. Annoyingly, it seems he still has plenty of energy and isn't ready to go wild. Kyaha. The laughter became a thought and thundered through this suspended world. But I couldn't stop now, or rather I had no intention of stopping. Veldanava's attention was also directed towards Ivarage. Luck tends to come in droves, and there's a bigger gap than I thought. I'm quite lucky, but when it comes to combat, I'm the type of person who always checks things carefully. I can't help but feel uneasy unless I've made arrangements that will definitely guarantee victory. So normally, we don't end up in a situation where we have to leave it to chance. We are thoroughly prepared to prevent this from happening, and we have strategies in place to deal with any unforeseen circumstances. That's why I'm not good at battles like this one, where I'm constantly surrounded by anxiety. On the other hand, it was precisely because of this situation that I felt so happy and grateful for the good fortune I had been blessed with. That's why I gave it my all without worrying about what was behind me. It's useless. My sword was easily blocked. Veldanava's expression told us that this was a natural outcome. But I'm not in a hurry. Since I thought I would be able to accept it anyway, my real choice was next. Back Seal. I clenched my right fist and punched Veldanava's left cheek with all my might. It reacted harder than punching steel, so I thought there would probably be no damage. However, my goal is to rescue Seal. The results are still out. Just returned master. Well then, I win. Sorry, Veldanava, I can't lose now. I was satisfied and happy to see Seal return, but I suddenly felt like my visibility had gone down. No, his omnipotent perception was the same as before, but the position of his Eyes, he had taken on the manly appearance he had in life, though he had slightly beautified it, but before he knew it, they had returned to the familiar. Beautiful girl, Shizu-san model. Seal-san. Showcasing that appearance is completely out of the question. For some reason, I got scolded. I thought it was unreasonable, but I felt happy just being able to have this exchange. I realized this once again. I need Seal-san. And now, I'm not afraid of anything. No matter who the opponent was, I had no reason to be shaken. Well, it's a shame that he has reverted from Mikami Satoru to Rimuru, but other than that he is in great shape. And luckily, Ivalage's target was not me, but Veldanava. I was very happy about it, but I was bothered by the incomprehensible remarks made by Ivarage. I am Lucia, Lucia is me. What are you talking about? It seems that Ivalage had obtained Lucia's memories from the memory that Veldanava had unleashed, and had come to believe that she was Lucia. However, the reality is different. Ivalage is Ivalage, the embodiment of destruction. As proof of this, although she may look like Lucia and have her memories, inside, she is still Ivalage. She is loyal only to her own desires and remains a child who is unable to think about others. What on earth is Veldanava thinking? My honest opinion is that everyone is doing unnecessary things. However, whether that was the reason or not is unclear, but Ivalage headed straight for Veldanava, which was hilarious. The final bosses clashing was a completely unexpected turn of events. But thanks to that, I feel like I can finally take a breather. I'd have to face the winner, but it felt better than facing both of them at the same time. Plus, if I was lucky, I might be able to reap the benefits. However, there was one thing that bothered me. It's about Seal. At the same time as I was punching Veldanava, I frantically activated Soul Devouring, intending to absorb Seal-san, who had likely been absorbed into him. However, for this operation to be successful, a detailed analysis of the enemy was essential. Not only did they not know where Seal was, but they also did not know what condition she was in. There was no way we could get Seal back until we had information about her location and condition. However, there is a problem. Seal returned very easily. That's something to be happy about, but no matter how I think about it, I can't help but feel like it's not my achievement. That's not true. Without Master, I would still be imprisoned. No. That's definitely a lie, right? I'm disappointed. I have never lied to my master, not even once in the past. Was that so? I feel like I have a lot of memories of being deceived. It's just your imagination. Really? Well, okay. Well, that's fine. I felt like I would lose if I thought too deeply about it, and then I remembered that there was something more important that I needed to do. It's Benimaru. I had done everything I could and left the rest to Ramiris. However, it occurred to him that Seal might be able to deal with the situation more appropriately. I used instantaneous movement, teleportation to move next to Benimaru. Rimuru, why are you here? No, I was worried about Benimaru. Benimaru-chan's magic core has begun to move and is stable, but it's good that he hasn't awakened yet. It seems that there is no doubt that he is safe, so I am relieved. Just as I was feeling relieved, I felt a presence behind me. Hey, you seem pretty relaxed. It's Guy. It looks like he's imitating me and using teleportation, but it seems like he can use it just as easily. I don't have the luxury of time. I want to wake up Benimaru while I can. Don't get in the way, I thought to myself as I replied. And yet, Guy got even more involved. So, is it okay to leave Ivalage alone? That's what I should have said. Guy, wouldn't it have been better if you had stopped Ivarage instead of just watching? If he was going to push all this trouble onto me, he should have tried his best too. With that in mind, I complained lightly, but he replied in a shocked tone. Shut up. If I had drawn my sword halfway through, it would have been even more dangerous. If that had happened, would you have taken responsibility for it? No, I won't. So, the correct answer would be this. In that case, there's nothing I can do about it. It can't be helped. Guy and I nodded to each other. It's a bit of a problem, because they seem to get along surprisingly well. That aside, wait a moment. After I declined, I had Seal examine Benimaru. This is an excellent move. Indeed, the procedure appears perfect. Thanks to Ramiris, the demon core that served as his heart was beating powerfully. Then why doesn't Benimaru wake up? Master has poured a little too much power into Benimaru, and it seems his body structure is changing to get used to it. Oh, I see. Was it my fault? I realized after it was pointed out, but even Benimaru's race seems to have changed. He was a demon, Kai god, and a high-ranking holy demonic spirit flame. N spirit, Ray demon Kai, but he had become a top-ranking holy demonic. Spirit flame and dragon Ryu, demon Kai. It wasn't a mistake, so I think it's okay. I quietly looked away and pretended I didn't see it. Everyone can encounter unexpected situations. If Seal had been there, this wouldn't have happened. After all, this was the first time I was performing the treatment on my own, so I had no choice but to accept it as it was. This may have been due to unnecessary ingenuity, but since the causal relationship could not be proven, it should have been ignored. Changing races isn't a big deal, and Benimaru is safe, so I think that's fine. That's how I changed my mindset. So, do you want me to wake you up? Yes, I'd appreciate it. The moment he wished that, Benimaru woke up. It was so surprisingly natural that I was more stunned than pleased. Rimuru-sama. Oh yeah, I'm glad you're safe. That was my line, but wait, why am I okay? Well, that's fine. Well, I suppose so. As soon as he said that, Benimaru suddenly stood up. I feel so good. I guess so. Because the species has changed, and I think the amount of magic essence and energy has increased to a surprising degree. But since Guy is next to me, I don't say anything unnecessary. I zipped my mouth and briefly explained my business. Well then, there's someone causing trouble over there, could you join them? Worried that Shin and Karara might be doing something reckless. Leave it to me. Right now, I feel like I won't lose no matter who I'm up against. Oh, that's reliable, or so I thought. Oh, my sword broke. Benimaru muttered, with a look of regret on his face. However, he said, oh well, it can't be helped, and looked like he was about to jump out, so I quickly stopped him. Hey, Benimaru-kun. What do you want? I don't know, it's not that. I never intended to order you to commit suicide, to face a strong enemy without a weapon. I'll find a replacement weapon, so please wait a moment. It's good to have it. I remembered that I had stored some spare weapons in the imaginary space. I was going to take them out and give them to Benimaru, but Ramiris took out a wand first. It was something I had been entrusted with by Lord Veldanava, but it had been stored away in the treasure vault. I couldn't retrieve it unless I was in this form, so I had completely forgotten about it. I see. As for its name, I'm pretty sure it was Prosperity Alta. But what about a cane? Just as I was thinking that, the moment Benimaru picked it up, it transformed into a long sword. Wow, this is amazing. Benimaru said in surprise. It seemed that the weapons created by Veldanava could take any shape there. Owner desired. I felt like I'd lost, and it was a bit frustrating. And what's more, Benimaru's broken sword, Crimson Gu-Ren, crumbled into pieces, but strangely, only a crimson orb the size of a marble remained. A small hole appeared at the base of the blade of Prosperity Alta, as if to accept this, and it fit perfectly into it. Oh, it's as if Kurenai Gurenren has been reborn. The appearance is the same, but the power is on a completely different level. I guess so. Because no matter how you look at it, it's a Genesis class. Ramiris had hidden something incredible, but it can't be helped if she had forgotten about it. In the first place, it seems that she had been entrusted with it for over 2,000 years, and it was probably a story from before her reincarnation that Ramiris had been repeating over and over again. Even so, Prosperity Alta is it. Could it be that the labyrinth produced wealth because Ramiris had this? Or is it just a coincidence? It seems that game casings, body, and other things had also washed up in Ramiris's labyrinth, so perhaps they had unexpectedly benefited from the blessings of Prosperity Alta. Either way, I wanted to investigate, so I thought I would try researching it with Kurobi once this battle was over. Well then, I'll have Kurobi prepare a new sword for me once this battle is over. But for now, I'll just borrow this one. I will be grateful to borrow it, Lady Ramiris. It's fine, don't worry about it. By relying on Ramiris, I was able to prepare a weapon for Benimaru. Now there are no worries. Well then, I'm counting on you, Benimaru. I understand. No matter what kind of enemy it is, I'll defeat it. Benimaru laughed fearlessly. In that case, I would like to leave it to him to deal with Veldanava and Ivalage, but that would be too much for Benimaru, who has just been revived. I also turned my attention to Zijin, who was protecting Benimaru. Zijin, please help out too. My will. Zijin replied happily. They seem to be doing their best over there too, and with Benimaru and Zijin joining the reinforcements, we should be able to do something. With this conviction, I saw off Benimaru and Zijin. Facing Diablo, Jahil was getting anxious. This was because he was being overwhelmed by Diablo, who to his senses was supposed to be inferior to him. Damn it, what's going on? I've obtained such a brutal and powerful power. None of Jahil's attacks worked on Diablo. Even attacks infused with Darkness Multiplication Devourer, Devastator Virus, were nullified by Diablo's deployed nothingness to protect himself. At this rate, it would be impossible to devour Diablo and convert it into power. So I changed my target to the others, but to my frustration and anger, it didn't look like the people there would be so easy to kill. The true value of ultimate ability, ultimate skill, Evil Dragon King, Azi Dahaka, is that it absorbs the power of the target it devours. It doesn't matter if it's a corpse, but if it uses the devoured materials and utilizes organic domination and mass production of replication, it is even possible to create a large number of powerful, evil dragon beasts. Vega was mentally immature and did not understand the power of his authority. Jahil is different. He can even make full use of the power of ability absorption. From his ultimate ability, ultimate skill, Evil Dragon King Azi Dahaka, and steal the energy of his enemies. And yet, he was unable to take energy from those present. Yuki used teleportation to escape, and not only Diablo but also Testarossa. Ultima and Carrera were also able to escape by making full use of nothingness. Don't mess with me, Jahil said angrily. He thought he could aim at Shin while she was unconscious, but Rumina's had put up an impenetrable defense, so he thought he'd just eliminate Rumina's, but Testarossa and the other three got in the way. While all this was going on, Diablo cornered him, and he had no choice but to decide that it would be better to change his target to another prey. However, this is also limited. There are mountains of cryptid corpses on the battlefield, but there's no real point in eating them. Jahil had already taken control of the two giants, Swim and Keikashi, but even So he was no match for Diablo. If they could obtain the materials, they could create an evil dragon beast. But in the suspended world, that would be meaningless. Unfortunately, it was not possible to grant the evil dragon beast the power to move around in suspended time. There's no doubt that it was a powerful power, but it didn't have the decisive power to overturn the current situation. Jahil was indignant, but he was pondering whether there was a way to escape this predicament. Then, I spotted some people having a relaxed conversation a short distance away. Naturally, this was Feldway and the others trying to persuade Cornu. The persuasion was half complete. In fact, it even seemed like a relaxed conversation was about to begin. For Jahil, it was a situation he could not ignore. Everyone was strong. If he ate them, there was a high possibility that he would gain new powers, and he hoped that this would be a way to break out of this situation. Escaping from Diablo would be extremely difficult, but Jahil thought this was the time to muster his strength. Therefore, he created an evil dragon beast that resembled himself in front of him and turned his back on it to deceive Diablo. Instead of running away, Jahil's target was Cornu. He believed that if he absorbed the power of Habataki that Cornu possessed, he would become perfect. However, that wish does not come true. TCH, I thought so. Behind me, I heard Diablo mutter in annoyance. Jahil becomes suspicious when they do not follow him, but the reason for this is revealed when a being appears before him. That was Zijin. Zijin's fist sent Jahil flying. With just that, Jahil lost a lot of energy. Damn, what happened? Who could have done this to me, the sorcerer? Emperor. And I'm confused. Jahil then regained his balance, but that was all he could do. Benimaru stood in front of Jahil. Leave this guy to me. Hearing this, Diablo shrugged his shoulders. I knew it would turn out like this. Very well. Zijin simply nodded, folded his arms and prepared to watch. From the start, Rimuru had ordered him to help Benimaru, so he thought he would just take action if something happened. It might be a different story with someone else, but there's no need to intervene. When it comes to Benimaru, Diablo groaned as he looked at Benimaru. Benimaru Dono has also been bestowed with Rimuru-sama's power and has finally reached the pinnacle of evolution. Is that so? That's why you feel so good. In truth, Benimaru had grown significantly in strength since coming back to life. After nearly dying, or rather actually dying. Moreover, Rimuru's blood slime cells flowed through his body. This absorbed an incredible amount of magical energy, greatly strengthening Benimaru's body. As a result, they reached the highest level of holy demonic spirits flame, N. Dragon Ryu Onikai, which are beings that should be called sub-dragon species. Its existence value easily exceeded 40 million, and it was even recognized as its master by the Prosperity Alta that it had borrowed from Ramiris. Therefore, the current Benimaru had the power of Prosperity Alta added to his power and possessed a hidden existence value close to 100 million. Diablo had seen through it accurately. My goodness, so Rimuru-sama wants to use this opportunity to give Benimaru Dono some experience. In that case, I guess my turn won't come around anymore. Realizing this, although he felt disappointed that he could not deliver the final blow to Jahil with his own hands, he accepted that this was also Rimuru's wish. However, there was one person who was not convinced. It's Cornu. As expected, there was murderous intent directed at him, so there was no way he wouldn't notice Jahil's approach. What's this, you little bug? You're directing murderous intent at me, are you? Getting too cocky, because you've just gained a little bit of power. Cornu made a bold statement to Jahil. In terms of ability, Jahil is currently far superior. However, Cornu's arrogance had grown since he had become one with Habataki. That's what's so bad about Cornu. Another negative point was that Feldway and the others had tried to persuade him to calm down, but he was unable to make use of that. Cornu had completely merged with Habataki, and his appearance had also changed. The wings growing on his back were those of a Habataki, and among the fallen angel's wings, the only pair radiated a golden crimson glow, making him look quite handsome. And what supported Cornu's confidence was his newly acquired power of teleportation. With this, he could escape from any situation. It was essential to assume that the opponent could not use teleportation. But if the opponent started chasing after him, then Cornu could just think of his next countermeasure at that point. That was Cornu's simple thinking. In a sense, it is not wrong to say that overthinking is not good. And in this case, Jahil couldn't use teleportation. To begin with, there were less than 10 people who could truly use teleportation, so Cornu's idea made sense. However, it is a huge inconvenience for those who are caught up in it. Tell him, Feldway. Zalario Obra, you guys too. Tell that idiot who tried to kill me that I'm important, that I'm a valuable comrade. Okay, so shut up, Feldway said, swallowing the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Without even noticing Feldway's feelings, Cornu redirected his anger and was about to complain further when, anyway, what's with those other guys? What's with Rimu? At that moment, Feldway snatched Cornu's consciousness. It can be said that this was a truly correct assessment of the situation. Zalario and Obra have no objections. If he had been even slightly slower in his decision, Diablo would have had his eye on him. If that had happened, he would have inevitably been dragged into it, which would have been incredibly troublesome and potentially dangerous. It was only natural that the two would support Feldway. Moreover, Zijin was also there. With Diablo and Zijin glaring at them, it would have been impossible for the three of them to protect Cornu. Cornu should have been more grateful to Feldway. Benimaru ends up fighting Jahil, but the energy gap between them is still large. Even to Benimaru right now, Jahil had more than twice the presence. However, there were no problems. Benimaru was confident that he would win. There are several reasons for this, but the main one is that he was not afraid of Jahil. An enemy that Benimaru isn't afraid of is not strong. So, who are you? Before I die, I'll at least ask your name. Benimaru spoke up. For Benimaru, this was his first time meeting Jahil. There was a presence mixed in, and although I felt like I had seen it before, I couldn't remember what it was. That can't be helped. Jahil is now like a different person from the one he was just a few days ago. He's a mixture of Kakashi and Swim plus Vega. Vega had also been devoured by Xeranis, so he had become a monster. These combined to form the ultimate life form, but Benimaru was not aware of this. Jahil was indignant at Benimaru's attitude. Don't underestimate me, brat. I am the great sorcerer Emperor Jahil. I am the one who will slay God and reign as the new creator god, and there is no one else but me. At the same time as he screamed, Jahil also cooled his head. The current situation is extremely bad. Jahil is not so stupid as to not realize this. The way out would be to eat Benimaru, who had come out alone, and take his weapon. That is undoubtedly a sacred artifact created by God. It would be a waste for a fool like that, so I must make good use of it. Jahil made that decision. On the surface, Jahil appeared angry and out of his mind, but deep down he was calm and plotting a path to victory. On the other hand, Diablo and Zijin were irritated after hearing Jahil's cry. Fool, how disrespectful. How disrespectful, how unpleasant. It seems that the new creator god has angered both of them. The two of them believe without a doubt that Rimuru is the only god, and that is why they cannot forgive Jahil's words. Benimaru wasn't that fanatical, so he was a little taken aback by the twos reactions rather than Jahil's words. Okay, calm down. And so, Benimaru tried to appease the two of them. Then, focus your attention on Jahil and talk to him. Ah, it's you. I was indebted to you at the sacred tree, so I'd like to thank you. Properly. Only after he was introduced did Benimaru realize that the enemy before him was Jahil. And so, once the true identity of the enemy became clear, he was reminded of the fate that had occurred at the sacred tree. For Benimaru, it was a difficult decision. To be forced into a passive battle, concentrating on defense. Since they had achieved their objectives both strategically and tactically, it was effectively a victory, but from Benimaru's perspective, it was not a complete victory. After all, only by defeating the opponent and eradicating the root of the problem can one be proud of victory. That was Benimaru's opinion and true feelings, so this encounter was something he couldn't have hoped for. This is the line, Jahil shouted, launching a quick attack on Benimaru. Not only will it be difficult to defeat Diablo, but he sensed something unusual about the newly arrived Zijin. Right now it was just Benimaru, but if these two joined in, Jahil's chances of winning would drop significantly. He had to defeat Benimaru before that happened. Jahil had also felt something strange about Benimaru, but he decided that it was probably due to the sword he possessed. He set aside his doubts and jumped at the opportunity he had found with all his might. Jahil's fists burned. Since flames do not spread through the air, it is not accurate to say that they were burning. However, Jahil's fists were extremely hot and glowed bright red. It was reminiscent of a raging flame. He then rushed towards Benimaru. He threw a series of punches, which split into tentacles and rained down on Benimaru. However, Benimaru remains unfazed. Quickly step forward with your left foot and slide forward across the ground. The tentacles should have touched Benimaru, but instead slipped through. A rain of fists continued to rain down, but none of them managed to touch Benimaru, instead piercing the air. Why, you bastard, what did you do? Ultimate ability, ultimate skill. King of Heat Flames Amaterasu. Secret Sunyo Flamen. This is the secret to combining offense and defense, and I will teach you its true value with your own body. As a final farewell parting gift, you see. Benimaru's body was flickering like a rising heat haze. Although he has a physical body, he cannot be touched. Benimaru is there even though he cannot be touched. Jahil unleashed countless tentacles that turned into sources of intense heat that instantly evaporated anyone they touched and attacked Benimaru, but it was all in vain. In the first place, ultra-high heat attacks don't work on Benimaru. What? Hazy dim black dark flame and Japanese symbol 100 Hyabloom Brightry. Chaos ran. Benimaru slashed at Jahil. Jahil was slashed to pieces with countless slashes, turning him into dust in an instant. Black flames clung to the fragments of Jahil's cells. They were flames transformed from the nothingness that burns everything to ashes. Jahil's ultra-high temperature tentacles covered in dark multiplication devourer. Devastator virus were an extremely dangerous attack, but Benimaru's hazy black flame was even more dangerous. It cannot be touched, cannot be extinguished, and will not disappear until it has burned everything to ashes. And this time, Jahil was engulfed in the flames and burned in unimaginable pain. The fact that even a single cell had a will of its own proved to be a disaster, and he was forced to experience, until his final moment, the struggle between the regenerating cells and the hazy black flames that tried to burn them up. It ended surprisingly easily. Benimaru laughed, saying that they were a good match. That's impressive, Benimaru Dono. Oh dear, it seems I won't have a chance to play after all. Diablo looked disappointed, as Zijin praised him wholeheartedly. Benimaru gave a wry smile. Diablo, you're rampaging as much as you want, right? Lately I've been doing nothing but commanding. Let me fight with all my might every once in a while. Of course, I understand. It seems to have adapted to your body without any problems, and I think it was a worthwhile battle for me to concede. Diablo, who answered like that, also thought that leaving it to Benimaru was the right decision. Because they were friendly rivals, he was both happy and frustrated by Benimaru's growth. Benimaru, Diablo, and Zijin, these three men competed for the title of strongest among Rimyaru's subordinates. This relationship would continue forever. Seeing Benimaru and the others like that, some people sighed. Oh my, did you say Benimaru? With your brother's sword in your hands, you'll be able to fight me on equal terms. Velgrind lamented as she brushed her blue hair back. He is half humble and half serious. Benimaru's growth was abnormal, and he had become half dragon-like. Velgrind suspected that Rimuru had done something, and she seriously considered what would happen if she were to fight Benimaru in earnest. It was a troubling question. You might win, or you might lose. In other words, the conclusion was that the two were roughly evenly matched. If Benimaru had not obtained Prosperity Alta, Velgrind would have won. There was no doubt about that, but it was a shock to Velgrind that her strength could be matched if she had a weapon. Huff, you don't need to stay like that. That's because, Grun, your sword is me. Rudra was naturally flirting with the woman he loved, but his voice was clearly audible even to his host, Masayuki. Perhaps it was because Rudra had manifested himself, but he was able to properly perceive the suspended world. That's why I was feeling extremely embarrassed right now. Oh my Rudra. Velgrind's joy was one of the reasons that was making Masayuki faint in agony. Stop it already. This is something I'm definitely going to get teased about later. Although he screamed this in his heart, it didn't reach anyone's heart. Isn't this the time to be flirting? You were so angry you were saying you were going to kill Cornu, but now it's like that never happened. That's not right, Masayuki thought. Well, Velgrind herself seemed indifferent, so Rudra's anger probably didn't last long, but even so, she left it too long. When Feldway and the others joined the battle and seemed to have begun to persuade Cornu, he probably lost the will to fight, but Masayuki's opinion was that if that was the case, he should just settle the matter properly. The point is, stop being affectionate and clean up after yourself properly. That said, I can understand why Rudra lost interest in Cornu. Cornu is a bad person, but he's not a bad person either. No, he is a bad person, but he seems to have a very lack of common sense, and it was clear that this was due to poor education by Cornu's comrades, Feldway, and the others. It wouldn't be a bad person at heart, but it was more like he was a child getting cocky. His quick temper made him seem petty, which made him hard to hate. Well, in my case, I can't cause any trouble, so I can just watch from a safe distance like that. Even so, Masayuki thought he would wait and see. Cornu was so shocked that he was speechless, and just followed Benimaru and the others with his eyes. Cornu was unconscious for only a short time. Therefore, the moment he opened his eyes, Benimaru had already dealt the final blow to Jahil. Even Cornu couldn't understand why Jahil had been torn to pieces. He couldn't follow Benimaru's sword stroke with his eyes. No, seriously, what is he? Feldway thought, has he finally understood reality? Do you finally understand why we were admonishing you? Even to Feldway, Jahil was a hated enemy. Vega, whom Feldway had begun to trust, had come back to life but was killed without even exchanging a word with him, although the only salvation was death. It was Jahil's doing that was the cause. If he had put off persuading Cornu and cooperated with Vega, perhaps his fate might have been different. However, to Feldway, Cornu was also an important ally. Until now, I've been a little too self-centered. A bit. Hey, stop romanticizing yourself in your mind. The outfielders Obra and Zalerio were noisy, but Feldway completely ignored them. That's why, from now on, I swear to cherish my comrades. Mr. Feldway, will you follow me, Cornu? Of course. If you're okay with me, I'd be happy to. Feldway's persuasion was successful. Cornu put aside his grudge against Velgrind and the others and made peace with them. Or rather, he was also calculating the pros and cons of not obeying here, as he knew that Benimaru and the others would become his enemies, and so he was able to make the right decision. Obra and Zalerio said nothing more, and just watched with lukewarm eyes. Image the scene, then returns to the site of the final battle. Veldanava was confused. Perhaps because of this, they are having difficulty analyzing the situation. That was inevitable, as just when he thought his beloved Lucia had returned to the Yellow Night, spring, Ivalage unfortunately resumed its activities. Moreover, Ivalage's target was Veldanava. No. Ivalage had set his sights on Lucia's soul, which Veldanava held dear. Ha 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 ha, love is wonderful. Let's become one, shall we? Then we'll be happy. Everyone will be happy. Ivalage was hideous. Although she has Lucia's appearance, her insides are horrifying and disgusting. No, it wasn't supposed to be like this. The Lucia I loved. Even if you gather all the pieces of Lucia together and knead them into one form, it's hard to call it the complete real thing. It was only at this point that Veldanava finally realized his mistake. How foolish, Velda, but I am the one who drove you mad. It was because I died. That you were led astray. No, you did nothing wrong, Veldanava wanted to shout. He thought that it was his fault, not Lucia's. However, there was no time left for that. Ivalage was approaching very close. In Ivalage's hand was memory. In his place, Veldanava held kindness. Ivalage attacked Veldanava with his sword, as if trying to steal his love. They are killing and devouring, trying to become one again. That is by no means a bad thing. For Ivalage, this is an act of justice. For Veldanava, this was the providence of the world and the truth. The world is cruel, but it gives you everything. That is the world Veldanava created. Veldanava, the All-One, could no longer bear the loneliness. That was why he created the world to relieve his boredom. In the process, his younger siblings, who share the same origin as Veldanava, the dragon species, were born. With the number of dragon species, now at 4, the chaotic world stabilized. Order was restored. The 7 primordial angels were created to manage this. Laws were established in a stable world, and the Axis world became firmly established. Veldanava was no longer alone, but he still could not fill the void in his heart. The world was too immature to replace the omnipotence that he had thrown away. Veldanava waited patiently. The world is slowly changing. As indigenous gods were born as embodiments of great power, the ancestor of the gods, luminous Twilight Valentine, was born. With the appearance of the divine ancestor, the world underwent a revolution. Intelligent life forms were born from the life that filled the world. And then, after a long time, humanity was finally born, a being that could act freely, assert its will, and become a receptacle for the soul. Veldanava was overjoyed. For Veldanava, who was bored with the world of nothingness, just watching the activity of life was enjoyable. The activities of the living creatures known as